I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we have the minutes from November 15th and November 22nd.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes for November 15th and November 22nd.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. We have warrants 11, 11P, 11R, and a cemetery fund number 1.
I'll make a motion that we approve warrants 11, 11P, 11R, and cemetery fund number 1.
I'll second
Okay, any discussion?
What is 11R?
What? That's ratifying.
Okay.
Specifically, town employees have a voluntary AFLEC program,
Right.
disability program that they contribute to, and apparently a bill had to be paid between our last meeting and here, and so we're ratifying that tonight, or we propose to ratify it.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Warrant 11 is for $49,600.97. And that was going to fuel, payroll transfers, retirement fund contributions, generator maintenance, highway department supplies and projects, and they're out of the ARPA funds. We were paying for engineering study of the Camp Arden structure. So, any other discussion, questions?
Was it Camp Arden or Park Lawn?
Park
Oh,
Lawn.
Park Lawn, right. Yep. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. I don't think we have anything on the ARPA funding for next. So, public comment and visitors. We're going to hear from Michelle Sherrier and
Bob Spencer.
Bob Spencer and the fire department, but Paul Normando, the reigning cribbage champion in Dummerston. Do you have something you'd like to speak to that's not on the agenda?
I do. Well, yeah, it's not on your agenda, but it's on your work session, and I don't
Yeah.
feel like sticking around for your work session.
So you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't help but notice when it was brought to my attention that your budget is up over 40% as presented at this point. And that doesn't include a half a dozen items that you haven't even plugged in. And even if you plug them in at last year's numbers, you're over 55%. I can't believe, I'm astonished and flabbergasted that the board would even consider presenting a budget like that to the people of Dummerston. I don't think anybody can afford that. And so I just wanted to bring it to your attention about what my sense is in public perception, as well as having to dig deep in your pocket, in my pocket when the tax bill comes along. I think it's obscene to ask the citizens of Dummerston to pay a 45 to 50% increase. So that's all I've got to say, and I hope the board takes it seriously. And
Paul, of course we take it seriously. It's insulting to say that, or imply that we might not be taking this seriously.
I'm sorry.
We are, the increase is primarily due to wages, and we found,
I'm sorry, can you speak up?
yes, you want to sit at the table?
Well, not necessarily, but
But if you want to
if
hear.
it allows me to hear better, I will.
Yep, good. Okay, so a lot of our increases, the major part of the increases are due to wages.
Right.
And we found that the starting pay for road crew in the surrounding towns is higher than what some of the people who have been working for several years on our road crew are making now. And so we feel like we may have, the next time we have to advertise for a new road crew person, if we keep the same rate or just increase it by 4%, which we usually do, our starting pay just won't compare with the surrounding towns. And so why would anyone want to work in Dummerston if they can just go to Putney or Newfane and make $7 or $8 more for starting pay?
So I don't know. I don't know what the comparables are. I
Yeah,
can't.
we looked into them.
Yeah. Well, but that it's not only on your salaries either, because once you increase your salaries,
We know
you're
the
increasing your
FICA,
FICA, all
we
your
know that.
unemployment costs,
Right.
and everything else goes up correspondingly, which isn't even reflected here.
It is. It's in the draft budget that's been posted.
Well, you didn't have, at least maybe I don't know.
Yes, it is.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
But in any event, if you want to bring your salaries back up to par, it seems to me you ought to do it on an incremental basis over several years, rather than beat people over the head in 1 year.
We'd like that, but then we can't, we have only 4 people working on the highway department. If we can't hire someone and let them know that in 7 years, they'll be making as much as what they could have made in Putney in, 7 years ago. It's just,
Well,
you have to be able to, it's a competitive market for
Yep.
road crew.
I understand.
And there's a, real quick, there's a couple parts to it. There's that and cost of living, right? So the increases in the town over the last 4 years have been 2%, 0%, 2%, 4%.
Well,
During that time frame,
Do you zero budget? Do you go back and take your 4 or 4.5 people that you have working, take their hourly pay, multiply it by the number of hours in a year, and then do that for each individual employee? You do, that's the way you do it? Okay, because that would make sense to do it that way, to build it from the bottom rather than just take last year's number and put a percentage to it.
Right, we took each individual,
Mm-hmm. But
so.
I'm not here to advocate for anything other than a taxpayer.
yeah,
Right,
And I think that there's a lot of people in town who are gonna have sticker shock.
yes, I'm a taxpayer too.
Like Todd was, he wasn't finished with the
yeah.
numbers.
I mean, so all of our workers are 12% behind on cost of living adjustments over the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell that, and we've considered exactly what you're saying, and we don't know where this is going to end up at the end because we're not done. We've considered doing it partly here, partly there, and figuring out a way to do it. The problem is, if you have an employee who's 12% behind over the last 4 years, all you're doing is putting them further and further behind if you don't make up that 12%, right? So imagine, I always go from the unknown to the known, right? So if you were investing money or paying rent, you've lost 12% of your investment that you could have maybe thrown into a 401k or an IRA, or for your rent, because we have not kept up with cost of living adjustments in the last 4 years. And so we have to figure out a way to get there.
I appreciate your problem and your dilemma.
Yeah, I know you do.
I'm here to present my problem and my dilemma.
And another one of the big increases on there is coming out of the capital budget, which last year we only spent 23 or 24,000, and this year it's a $200,000.
Yep.
So I mean, there's another
So-
big
But
increase.
last year's bill went up anyway too. So I mean, there are a lot of things that are going up with inflation and everything, but 50% increase in your property taxes is pretty onerous in anybody's book.
Paul, we hear you, and we've been talking about that, and the budgeting isn't done. But I will say, I think we've been remiss as a select board over the last 5 years in not keeping pace. It's been a high priority to level fund the budget or keep the increase at a bare minimum. And that's been a priority, Zeke and others have championed that. I'm new on the select board. I wasn't involved in last year's budgeting, but I think that approach is coming back to bite us. And it is going to be hard, and we're going to work to try to make it less hard, but there will be increases that we'll be
I
proposing.
understand. People are generally prepared for an increase. They're not prepared for a howitzer type of increases.
Mhm.
So, and you're gonna have to answer to them at town meeting, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yes, they can vote the budget down.
Mm-hmm.
So
What do you do when that happens? If that happens?
Then the board would have to go back and redo the budgets or the items that didn't pass and have another special town meeting and put it back to the voters.
I would imagine, so my dream scenario is that it's presented and that there's information ready at hand for everybody to look at on what the increases are. Whether it's wages, capital fund, we're just going to fire truck. So that everybody can see what the increases are. And what I want, because I have pretty thick skin, is I want people to stand up and go, you know what, I'm not going to pay the town employees that kind of money. I don't care that we're behind in the COLA, because if that's the case, then we make a decision based on that, right? But what I don't want is people standing up going, well, I'm not going to pay for this. It's like, well, do you want town services? Do you want road crew? Do you want the roads plowed? I mean, there's a lot of things that are part and parcel to paying people what we should have been paying them 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm fine if people say they don't want to pay for it. What I hope to have is a reason, right? Because everybody's going to have to say, if you want to stand up and tell us, I'm not going to pay for that, okay, then you let everybody know that you're not going to pay for wages in order to hire people or to keep them above the inflation numbers. And then we'll go from there. But I understand it's going to be, I have no illusions even being new here. It's going to show up and somebody's going to say, you know what, I don't want to pay that. Or I don't want it to be more than 25% or 20%. And then when the vote's done, we have to go back and figure out how to make it work.
You got a lot of people in this town who, even with the property tax rebate system, that are gonna be hurting. If you, with that kind of an increase. So
Understood.
I'm just asking you to keep it in mind.
Yep.
And
Well,
And I know you will, but it's a real shocker when you first see it.
yeah.
I was shocked when the first total came out, but
And we haven't had, when we post it on the town website, we don't have any detail or explanation. You know, it's just the raw numbers there, so it makes it more of a shock.
Well, you can see part of it when you can see it, the $80,000 increase in the highways part. You can see that, right away. So. Anyway.
Do you think it would help at this point, I'm just suggesting this, if line items that are increasing more than, let's say, 10% or 15% are highlighted so that it's then a little easier to go through it and go, okay, I don't have to do the comparison myself, just show me where this 43% is coming from, 44%.
They're already, on the website, they're already highlighted yellow if they've increased more than $1,000.
Well, there you go. So,
I've already done that.
thanks.
And
Thank you for listening, I
The
appreciate
same
it.
way.
the library is wanting to double their,
Well, it's something when you're going from, I don't know, 8,000 or 9,000 to 15,000
no,
or something
from
like that.
18,000 to 36,000.
Mhm.
So it's not nickels and dimes. The fire department would like $101,000 in addition to capital expenses, starting capital expenses. And then next year, I think, we've got to start paying for
You're gonna pay for
another
the fire truck. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's another $250,000, what is it, 150, 150,000.
120 a year
Yeah.
For 5.
for 5.
Well,
It's not looking rosy.
there's a few thorns in those roses.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks. Well, let's see. Michelle?
Sure.
Bob and I will come
Bob?
sit with
Come
you.
up.
Sure, yeah.
We got a lot of pencil sharpening
Okay,
to get our budget.
And Michelle Ferrier has been our representative to the Victim Solid Waste Management District for about 25, 30 years, I think. Is that right?
Longer than all of you have been around,
It's a
right?
record of some sort.
Yeah, we sharpened pencils to get our budget to the point where we would only be increasing, for like our town, for instance, the 4%. And you will or should have gotten this town assessments for the fiscal year. And you can see where Dummerston had been Last year, 12,800, this year, 13,300. So we're increasing it by $500. And we're getting a lot done. You should have seen the letter that Bob sent out that talks about the annual assessments and shows you a historical vision of how it has looked in the past. You know,
Did everyone?
Yeah, that was
have a
really
chance? Oh,
interesting.
okay. I brought copies if
Yeah.
anyone.
Today,
Yeah. It was hard in those years when we managed to cut it back when you were talking about, let's have it level funded or even less. But we probably, like the town, reached a point where it's probably not going down for the foreseeable future. And we also face, the problem with, trying to pay the right wage to the people that are coming so that we have somebody that we can hire. So you definitely have my sympathy, especially with the COLA. It has to be done. And at any rate, you can see we've done sticker sales, good thing. We still have the solar that we're getting income from. We've really made well with the household hazardous waste collection now that we do it in-house. And that's a huge, big relief, I think, for the citizens, not just us.
Yeah.
And it's very, very popular. And we do have, as Bob's pointed out, assistance to the school. And a lot of good is coming out of all the schools and the students knowing what to do when it comes to recycling. And we've got the traditional business outreach whenever it's requested or when we contact folks too. So anything to add to this, Bob?
Well, I wondered if we were talking budget, if you had any. Zeke was involved in the very early days when I started 10 years ago. The assessments just kept rising, the cost of recycling, and it was a very difficult time period. Michelle and the board had to decide, do we close that processing plant? And it was basically dominated by Brattleboro, and they have more votes because of population, and more towns wanted to leave it open. But now that we look at it over the last 5-6 years, it definitely was a cost saver, but it didn't change the cost. They just got passed on to the towns and the citizens. Those costs are still out there.
Yes.
So and so if you had any questions about that, we have, like you guys, very extensive budgeting workshops and staff input, and we started out with a draft budget of a 19% increase.
Yeah.
And the board said that's not acceptable, and so we just decided we're going to cut this, and we'll be able to do it, but it's not what I would like as a director,
Mm-hmm.
including I have no budget for giving any merit raises. It's just difficult. And right now, we're very short-staffed. I have one person out with a knee replacement, another person out sick. We've been running ads for a part-time and now a full-time, and we've had no response. It's just like people aren't out there wanting to work. And I emphasize with what he was saying that, the budgets hurt people, but we have a function that we have to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
It's a statutory function, we all do. And so we do the best we can, and I have to give Michelle a lot of credit. She's very steady when we get in these meetings, and tries to put a sense of humor on some of it.
And we have a great board now. We're very, very fortunate.
So
Really
I'm
dedicated.
very pleased with what we get accomplished for pretty much level funding. And I'm always interested in hearing from. I'll never forget, Zeke, one of my first meetings where you came to the office the next day and said, "Gee, I'd like to really go through your budget with you." I don't know if you remember that.
yes,
but
of course, yeah.
and I was really impressed that a select board member was really interested. And there's others around the district that get involved too. And I welcome it. So anyone here who has thoughts or ideas about things we might do differently. Very open to it.
And of course, we've got a big year coming up ahead of us.
And just another thing, we're part of a network of 14 solid waste districts in the state. In fact, we have monthly meetings. It was this afternoon, and I didn't make it at one, Zoom. And we have one of the most lean budgets and staffing of any of the districts. We're the only district in the state that doesn't have this additional surcharge, which is allowed on per ton of trash. In fact, you probably recall there was a proposal before I
Long
started
time
here
ago.
to levy that, and it was a revolt, you know,
Yeah,
mainly by the haulers,
right.
which I have to say I agree with, because it puts them at a competitive disadvantage when they're working in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and it's a regional waste shed. So overall, we have been lucky to have some new sources of revenue, so I can't take credit that we just cut, but we have our new solar array, which the town's a member of as an off-taker. It's a huge revenue source to us, over $250,000 a year, which is, 20% of our budget. Our compost facility is a profit center. We actually make over $100,000 a year running that. And our cardboard baling system is a profit center. And so as the manager, I'm constantly trying to make each of the cost centers, hopefully, at least break even. But there's things like education and outreach that will never be, And, so we're, as Michelle said, we're moving into a new era with building an expanded compost facility. And again, this has been over a 2-year project to get the funding and the financing. We've secured 3 different sources of grant money. The district itself has appropriated out of surplus funds over $250,000. And so we have over $700,000 in hand to pay for this facility. It will then allow the district to take in more materials. We've reached our capacity under our permit. But under Vermont regulations, to go to the next level, you have to enclose the facility and manage runoff. It's just have a higher level of regulation. And so we've been able to figure out how to do that, and all the permitting. I'm still not done with amending my Act 250 permit, just because it takes forever. So what's interesting, a little bit kind of coincidental, but part of our compost facility is in the town of Dummerston.
I was just going to ask that. Yeah.
It's part of the former landfill that was sold by Stubb Thomas to the town of Brattleboro in the 90s, and then eventually to the district. And Mr. Thomas, who passed away about 6 years ago, retained surface rights. After he sold the land, he maintained this legal right to store dirt and asphalt. It was associated with an asphalt plant that was adjoining. And our attorney, when I was talking about, clearing all title and everything, said, you really got to get rid of this, because you're going to build something there and someone claims they have rights. So Michelle and I spent several hours here with our attorney researching your deeds.
Yeah.
And of course, your staff was great, just so helpful, copies and so we're very close. 4 months later, we're still not completely there to getting a quitclaim deed from 3 different parties. But and we also pay taxes to Dummerston. It might be something like $12 a year for your little slice of our property. So anyways, that's been something that's been my priority, to get this funded and permitted and set this district on a course for really the next 10, 15 years.
Really looking ahead.
So I'd love to have anyone here come by and visit our facility, see the compost operation, especially once we complete it next summer. And I also would like to suggest that at some point, the town could use some compost and some of our compost blend soil in your highway and road projects. It's kind of interesting, in 10 years of marketing this product, I've never had a town buy 1 cubic yard of compost. It's just kind of something foreign to them, how to use it. It's not a criticism, it's just a fact of how people do business. And I have a lot of contractors that use it. And they love it because it establishes vegetation, it reduces erosion, it's consistent with all these stormwater management and water quality standards the state's implemented. So that's something I'm gonna try to do, is reach out to town highway departments in the next year. And I think Dummerston would be a great candidate with all your narrow roads and steep banks and.
Our Salmon Brook disaster, you know, that may make a difference.
Yeah, okay.
That's it from Bob.
That's beyond me.
So, someone with a garden in their backyard could come to the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District and purchase compost for their gardens, right?
Well, we actually don't sell to homeowners. We work with distributors
Okay,
because we're not set up to load,
okay.
shells.
No retail compost.
Right, so actually, Renaud Tree is one of our distributors.
Yeah.
Right.
D&E Tree in Guilford, Maple Hill Nursery, Swansea, Allen Brothers. So we have, and then I have Boyd Farm in Wilmington. And
Yeah.
so we've got a network of distributors, and any contractor or landowner that wants to buy 10 cubic yards or more will sell direct to, and that doesn't really undercut our distributors because their bread and butter is the smaller gardens. But yeah, hundreds of people, probably thousands in the region use the compost. So it's been a great product. And I like to say it's the only recyclable material that stays local. Your organics. Everything else goes somewhere. And we actually, Michelle arranged, and we've done a couple tours of the processing facility in Rutland where all of our recyclables go.
Yeah.
It's a Casella facility, and it's very impressive. A year ago now we went in December, and they had that week just installed 3 robots.
That was amazing.
It's using artificial intelligence to scan what's on the belt, and these robots are programmed to recognize certain reflectants and pick up at like 1 second a thing, like whether it's an HDPE or a different polyethylene, and it was really impressive. But we're driven to this because they can't get enough workers to sort. It is basically not a glamorous job.
And we were there 2 days after it went live. So that really showed a lot of guts on their part.
But we also were
fun.
there to ask, is this stuff, all this that we work so hard to separate and haul, really being recycled? Because we hear people saying, oh, it's not. I'm convinced it is, and the state monitors it. So we're very fortunate in this region. We have one of the highest levels of service for recycling and composting in the country.
How big will the new composting facility be, square feet?
Well, in terms of square footage,
Yeah, is part of it's enclosed
it's going to be literally
or roofed?
a fabric building, like a salt shed type thing, about 5,000 square feet, on a concrete slab with 4 70-foot long aeration trenches that will now put air through the piles and greatly accelerate decomposition, and it prevents the formation of leachate from that active compost phase. That's what the state was after. And I do have, it's hard to see it, but this is the layout of the facility. This is for we have it out to bid right now, contractors.
Right.
And one of your locals, Evans is interested in bidding it and has done work with us.
Good.
So about 5,000 square feet, and it's really, that's the only new thing. And then the rest will be like it is, big piles outside.
Right.
It's very
And then
low
you'll see that
tech,
fabric cover.
Yep.
very
So-
low tech.
Anyone have any questions for these guys for me? Well, thank you very much. for-
Thank you folks for giving us this opportunity.
Yeah,
So,
All right, okay.
And-
Do we-
I'm happy to come back in. Maybe you could tell me when it is in April, after, town meeting and people have been, elected to the board, when it's appropriate to, step back in and say hi to any new faces.
Yes,
So I don't know if that's the first meeting in April or the second one, but I'll be sure to put it in my calendar.
okay.
And or any time in the meantime, if you feel it's necessary, I suspect that the budget's gonna really take the rest of your time. But if any part of it, comes down to a question for us, for the district, just give a shout.
Okay.
It's just rolling along, thankfully quite well. I'm pleased, and I'm impressed with the work we're doing.
Well, I think we're all very grateful that you are willing to be the representative for Dummerston for so long. You take it so seriously and
Oh, I do.
highly regarded down there.
and as any chair knows, there's a lot of additional work to set agendas and plan for the meetings and run them, and then represent when there's some event, like when I did the pre-bid conference, Michelle was there.
Yeah,
She
boy.
did the introduction.
I met all those fellas.
And I like that because it shows we have support of our community.
Well, if you want to ask me, who showed up, were they local, were they out of towners? I have to have the answer for you, so I work at it.
Great, thanks,
So
Mike.
we're very
Thanks very
pleased,
much.
staff, to have someone.
Yeah.
We've had different types of director or
Yeah,
chairs
chairs.
that have
Yeah.
more micromanagement styles, and which isn't necessarily bad. But
Well,
so thanks, folks.
thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Bob.
I'll be
Yeah.
keeping my finger on the pulse to see how it goes here. I hope not too much really gets cut otherwise. I think you're on the right track, getting the staff that they need. Stay well.
Thanks. Okay, well, representatives from the West Dummerston Volunteer Fire Department are here again. We had some questions and want to get back in touch with you, just make sure we understand.
Yeah. So I sent an email to Selectboard with this. I don't know if anyone printed it off or wants a copy, but
Got it.
you've got that. Okay. Well, I don't know if you guys have this. And so I know that presenting comparative financing in different formats is often confusing. So I was appreciative of the chance to come back and just speak to it. And thank you for calling us back. I'll also say that it's been interesting to come last time. We learned a lot about the library, and just now I learned quite a bit about the landfill. And I know all about Paul's position because I'm a taxpayer, so I'll skip that part. But kind of fascinating.
Well, we meet again in 2 weeks. You're welcome to come
Yeah.
back.
Oh, thank you.
You never know who will be here. Could be the cemetery guys.
Yeah.
We're all most of us are taking a lithium ion battery class in 2 weeks.
Oh, right, you mentioned that.
But the other thing I sort of appreciated about watching your discussion with Paul is that I feel like we've now just switched hats, and we will have a very similar discussion where I am now the select board and you guys are now Paul, where I am complaining about, I am here with increase and you are here with incredulity, and we now swap. And I think that a lot of that is birthed from things outside of the control of anybody at this table about just like the economy and costs. And then the other piece that contributes to it is that like attempts to be level funded, which the town did, as did the fire department. And we've now sort of avoided some things as a fire department, which have come home to roost and made our situation painful in much the same way that you guys are navigating those economics. So anyways, those are, thanks for that little soapbox. This spreadsheet that I sent out, and I was forwarded your email, and I wanted to talk about just like kind of almost to explain it line by line, but not to make it too simple, but it seemed as if the costs of our fundraising and the total amounts of our fundraising were maybe being like confused together or conflated as double counted or what that is. So I just kind of wanted to explicitly say that the fund drive letter and the WDFD fundraiser events, like what those are. So every year about this time, we're working on it right now, we send out a letter, we hire printing and mailing, and we mail a letter to all the Dummerston residents, and we ask for donations. That effort last year resulted in $16,000. So that's what we have in our budget again for this year. So that's a revenue source. The fundraiser events are things we do: a golf tournament, we do pancake breakfast, we did a barbecue chicken event. Is that it? What else am I missing? Those are our events, right? And so historically, the fire department has broken those two fundraising efforts out in different lines: fund drive letter and events. Those two together, we've got a budget that we are expecting to take in $16,000 and $30,500, or $46,500. That's the revenue side of that. To deliver those events, the fund drive letter has the highest ROI. It just costs paper and stamps, and we get $16,000 out of it. That's fantastic. The events, we have a higher cost to produce those events. We have to rent the golf course for the whole day. We have to feed 70 golfers. They get these little set of 3 golf balls in a mug, and we make an event. We make more. We make money back on it, as is in sort of the more detailed budget. But to be able to earn those $46,500, we spend $13,450. So we put $1 into our fundraising efforts, we get 3 back. In our ask, we didn't feel like it was fair to include the fundraising costs as part of our budget. If we can all just agree that like fundraising pays for itself, you net out whatever it costs to mail the letters to ask for money, and we don't need help with that piece. The fundraising can cover itself on an annualized basis. The core operating is what everything else in this line. Everything else in our budget is summed in that one line. That was how we got to that dollar figure. And so I guess, are there any questions on how that works?
I have a question. This is the only thing that's caught me out. So the 30,000, so 16,000 I understand from the well, actually both of them. Is that the gross or the net?
That's the gross.
That's the gross.
That's the gross.
So for your 13.5, you're getting 46 back.
Yes.
That was mostly my confusion. Because your email had 46,000 listed as the total. And I'm like, wait a minute, is that the 30,500 plus 13? It wasn't quite the same number. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't the same number.
Why those two? Yeah.
But the 46
is fund drive letter plus events.
plus events, right? And so that's a total. And so your net is whatever those two minus
Minus 13.
13.50.
Right.
13.5.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. That clarifies a lot for me.
Mm-hmm. And so that's how we see our budget. And so our initial reaction to your math is well, one, maybe this would be a good meeting to come back to because maybe we're not on the same page. And then two, if we were on the same page, that would not be our preference to receive even the same number of dollars. And the reason being would be that our operating expenses, that 101,968, we would be at a planned operating deficit. We would begin burning reserves just to cover our lights and fuel and insurance and dispatch fee. Like purchasing equipment aside, we would begin to be losing money at that.
I disagree. Because if we give you the 101,968 that you originally asked for, you actually end up with a $40,000 surplus.
Yes, so that's what I have in this model also,
Right.
$40,500.
Right.
And so
No, $40,050.
$40,050. And so that's what sort of the bottom of my little spreadsheet came to present, is that, you know, we do not wish to just purely like receive money and spend it the next year for capital reserves, because we have upcoming reserves in outer years that would be too great to be able to stomach that. We're going to have to be able to begin contributing to that on an annual basis. Like our air packs are $10,000 a piece. And so to replace half of those is going to cost $150,000. And so it would be our preference to begin putting down $30,000 a year for.
Why wouldn't that be under your capital budget?
Right.
It is.
So if it's under your capital budget, you're asking for it twice then.
So yeah, so what is a little different, I think, is maybe where we're not on the same page is, you know, who is holding that capital budget. It sounds like it is the town's preference to hold those dollars for capital purchases and release them at the time they're purchased.
Right, that's the whole purpose of the capital budget, is to, you just like right now you're asking for pagers, right, for radios for this year. So you're asking, it looks like, for 5 of them for this year. So you would go out, purchase your radios, and it would come in here, get approved, and it would be sent out through the town. The town would do all that.
So that's how some towns do it. In that comparison sheet with the other towns I passed around, that's how the town of Putney does it. They have a municipal fire department. That's not how any of the other towns do it, so that's not necessarily a given. If that's how the town would like to proceed in a relationship like this, we're open to that. I think that may be.
I think to get into our capital budget, I think that's how it would have to be, because we're putting that money into the capital fund, and we're putting it in for fire trucks, we're putting it in for dump trucks, we're putting it in for graders, and that's how we do it. So if your pagers come in at $12,000, you get $12,000. You don't get the extra $3,000. It's all in the capital budget.
But can I, like the turnout gear, we made that agreement years ago, the not to exceed $4,000. We just secured 2 more sets that we're going to be billing you guys for here shortly. They've bumped up to $2,900 a set for the exact same gear. So now we're down $1,000 because we agreed to a $4,000 max on a plan that we agreed to 4 or 5 years ago.
But see, that's the thing with the capital budget. Those numbers we plug in this year for your radios. We'll plug in the $15,000 for this year, and
Which those radios?
or your radios. Say your radios, and you've got it out there 3 years. You've got radios out there 3 years. If next year those radios go up, and you're saying, so you come in and you say right now, so it looks like it's $3,000 for a portable radio. For one radio, it looks like it's $3,000.
We checked into that too. And they're like $4,200 now.
So that number is wrong. So what you would do is you would give us the correct number, and the future years. And so next year, you see they've gone up. You come back and you try to do it as soon as you see it's there. and we change that number. That number is just a number we put in for reference. So, I mean, we're going out 10 years from now. I mean, just look at your fire truck for 28, you've got 500,000. I was at the meeting right over there when the gentleman said it's going to be way over that.
Yep.
Put the number down that you think it's going to be. You put down that number, you put it down now, so we can be planning for the future. And 3 years from now, you look at a truck and say, geez, now it's 800,000. You come back and you put that in your next year's budget, that truck is now 800,000. That's how you do it. You wouldn't, don't wait till that year and say, oh, guess what? These numbers are moving numbers.
So the difference between, let's say I have this straight, maybe. So if you say the radios are $3K each, as we have on here, is 15,000, and we hand you 15,000, and all of a sudden they're 4,200, are you just going to buy 3 and just call it even, or are you going to say, man, we should? Because as Lou says, with the capital budget, next year's 15,000. When you come back to talk to us, that number suddenly becomes 18 because the price increase. And so what we're doing is we're covering that. Is the way it's working now is we handing you the budget, and if the radios go up, you're just out of luck and you don't get 5.
I think culturally the uses and the planned uses of the fire department's capital budget versus how the town utilizes its capital budget are a little bit different. One of the reasons that we keep this capital budget is that we have a lot of these items that have 0 years life expectancy remaining. We would very much like to continue to use those items. We're not going to just necessarily say, oh, well, it's due in year 2 and we got funding for it from the town, so we're just going to buy it. If we have those items and we feel like we can get another year out of them, we would rather leave that money in our capital budget and roll it forward, let it accrue some interest.
That's what you
put
do
it
right
into
here.
something else.
It would continue here. Just because you have radios this year for 15,000, and you realize, guess what? We only need 2 radios this year. You buy the 2 radios. That money's still in the capital fund budget. It's still in the budget. So what you got to realize is we're trying to work with you to keep the capital budget going in the future. So it's not like, it almost feels like you're thinking, if we don't get it from them, we're going to lose that money. The money's in the capital budget. It will, and if we work this way with it, it's easier to do it with the taxpayers. You hear the taxpayers, you heard today. So if it's in here, if you put it in here, it's available. It doesn't mean you have to spend it. We've pushed trucks out before, when Lee's come up to us and said, guess what? I can go another year or 2 years on this truck. That's fine. We move that number out 2 years.
Right, and he'll also come and let us know that the grader that we've had listed for $160,000, that he's thinking of getting in 2 years, is now $180,000. And so we changed the numbers, and that just changes how much money we have to raise. So we have that ready.
To advocate for ourselves, if we don't get the money from you, that doesn't necessarily mean that it stays in the capital budget and is allocated in future years for the fire department. So what you're describing is how municipalities fund their capital needs, but it's not at all how any other town in this area funds its nonprofit departments. And so what I'm saying is that if we roll an item forward and the next year the grader breaks on year 6 instead of year 10, and the town decides that that's more important than our item, there would be no recourse we would have to be able to say,
can I be the new guy on
we
this one?
disagree with that.
Because I just learned this.
Okay,
Can I be
go
the new
ahead.
guy? If it's in the capital fund for the fire department, we can't take it without going to the town and asking.
That the voters have approved that.
So that money is there. We can't just go take it for something else.
How far out does that roll? That's
I
news
don't
to
know
me.
that. Dang it, I had a good answer for this.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I love that answer because that's what would be one of my concerns.
I asked exactly the
is
same question.
money
when
I
first
don't
started
hold
this.
is not my money,
Every
right?
year at town meeting, we present the capital budget, and we ask for 200,000 to be put in the capital budget, and then out of that we say, will the voters approve 160,000 for a new dump truck?
And they approve, and it gets voted on, it's approved.
Yeah, the
It's
town
like-
meeting.
like-
And so that truck doesn't all of a sudden jump up anywhere. Your number will be voted on that year. For the items that you want that year is when it's voted on.
Yes.
And that's when you will get it.
And we don't run the capital fund dry. We try to keep,
Yeah.
200,000 or something, and so,
One
Because-
concern Paul had too was our treasurer,
yeah.
who's not able to be here, is with the operating expenses, if we're running that off of fundraising and let's say it pours at the golf tournament, we're out $10,000 and no recourse whatsoever to, pay the light bill.
Mm-hmm.
Like we could take it out of our reserve, but there would be no way to rebuild that reserve.
So how would you, let me ask you this question. So whether we had the money in the capital fund for the town or in your capital fund, right? Because that's kind of what we're talking about right now, where it's going to reside. If the rain out affects both of those. If we have it in our capital fund and there's a rain out, you guys are still $10,000 short, right?
Not on our operating.
Well,
Well, where are you gonna get
then
that
we've just had a decision made for us that we made in the past, and we don't really have so much of an opportunity to respond to it.
So how would
It
you
says,
cover that?
oh well,
$10,000?
$10,000 got put into paint,
Right.
and now we have to spend $10,000 on paint because that's what the town voters approved. When in fact we just burned $10,000 on
Right.
operating expenses, and we're just now $10,000.
Right. So if it happens, you would then shuffle your money within what you've got in your pocketbook
Yes.
to cover the things you need to do.
Yeah. but
Our operating expenses are due net 30, right? They're
Right.
invoices.
Dropping net 30.
Yeah.
They're
They're
government contracting there.
Mhm.
The right. Okay.
So that was one
So
of
we don't
our
really have a
concerns.
choice on a lot of those expenses. So that's one of the painful parts about us running our operating expenses with a large amount of fundraising is that it's lumpy. Some years somebody dies and leaves us 20% of a house and we do great. And some years it rains on the golf tournament and it was a bad year for the economy, so no one donated anything. And that's an easier thing to flatten out a capital budget on, and it's a more difficult thing to pay your bills on.
You have, I thought I saw something that you had some reserve beyond.
Yeah, we do. I didn't print that and bring it.
Yeah.
We've got, I think it's about $150,000 was the.
So you can cover a shortfall of $10,000 if it rains.
And out of that 150, 30,000 is going out the door next month for mutual aid.
Right. So you had a number of different accounts.
So
Yeah, that was a not quite reconciled and close, but it was the 3/4 of the way through the last month.
So the fiscal year that just ended in June, this past June, you actually had a surplus of $17,908.
We did.
So did you transfer that to your capital fund?
It's in our general fund. So that's something that
Did that go into revenue for this fiscal year?
I believe so. I'm not the treasurer, so I
It would
don't
have
put
been,
those.
if we were doing it, we'd have a line item that said surplus, and we'd carry the surplus over, and $17,000 would just be $17,000 we wouldn't ask the taxpayers for. So,
So I can explain that, because, well, David knows, but I used to be the treasurer for the fire department. So the fire department does do it slightly different. If there's a surplus, they take a vote and they decide that they're going to transfer that surplus to another fund, such as their capital fund. So when I was treasurer, and this is quite a large surplus, I don't think we ever had something that large.
Yeah, it's a
But it
house-
would have been
house donation.
transferred at the time to the building fund for the new firehouse here in the center. So they do it slightly different than the town, but still, this is a surplus and that's why the funds are in separate funds and it doesn't stay in your general fund. It should be transferred to one of your funds
I
and
can speak
earmarked
on that a little
for
bit,
something
too.
else.
So with the mix up in leadership in October, I suspect that vote will happen this month, where we kind of try to decide where that stuff is going. But that's why Dan couldn't answer that, is because we haven't made that decision yet, to be quite honest.
One of our last business meetings was about our banking and our accounts and the structures of our funds, and they seem duplicative in some areas. Like there's separate capital buckets that seems that they should be shared, and there are certain items that are in reality used more like operating expenses. Like the rescue fund buys gauze and bandages and CPR masks and stuff like that. That is a segregated fund that seems to me to come out of it. Should be a general fund. So there's some review that we're working on to update a lot of that. I mean, I would love to come annually and be negotiating the merits of this plan and like what is the dollar amount that's needed to like keep the bottom line in the black. And I think, you know, we'll get there, but like aligning our process and our reports and like how we do our budgets with how you guys would like to see them is not something that's ever actually really been done.
Right.
And so we're struggling now to try to do that.
But I think it's good. It's a hard sell to me to say you want to be in our capital fund, but not the way we do the capital fund. That's a hard sell for me. You're either in or you're not in. You know what I'm saying? If you want us to put this in our capital budget,
I don't want you to put it in your capital budget. I want you to give it to us so that we put it in our capital budget. And then I'd like to come discuss and present that capital budget to you. That's the way the other nonprofit fire departments in this county receive their funding from the towns. I think it would be easier as a select board to defend a single line item contribution to your fire department than having 10 lines of budget.
I would strongly disagree with that. I would think having it out in writing, what you're actually asking for each time at town meeting, makes it a lot easier for me to look and say, I agree with this. Yes, they need this.
Right.
Or I really disagree with you on that. Here's a number for the fire department. I think, and when you guys were talking about it, I thought we were all on the same page. This was going to be in our capital budget. We were going to put this on there. And I was like, this is what I've been talking about for years, is trying to, having this way. So we see it. Everybody sees it.
Yeah, I prefer that over what we had been doing in the past. So that's, number one. Number two, where we are today. So, I appreciate the town's willingness to go that direction. I mean, I would be lying to myself to not say that we would prefer to just manage that ourselves.
How many guys do you have on the department right now?
It's like 21 when I last count, and that includes the junior members, so 20.
I just want to. I'm looking at the portable radios. Does everybody have to have a portable radio?
Yep. Well, any interior person, especially.
How many interior people do you have though?
Somewhere in 10 and 12.
And because it's looking like you're asking for in the next 4 years you're asking for 20 radios. Is what I'm getting, and if you only have 10, you only need 10 or 12.
Yep.
So I'm just saying, let's get down on those numbers and just, but like you said, the radios have gone up, so that overall number may be correct. The
dollar
60,
value.
yeah, the dollar value may be correct, but you're going to get and that's the thing, you will be asked those questions at town meeting, how many members you have, and and that's the thing, you've been to town meetings before, and you see people come up with all those little things, and somebody's going to ask you that question.
Yeah, Paul will want to know.
Right, exactly, how many members you have, and that's why I'm asking these questions, and then you start lining them up here, and and that's why I think it's good to have it in our thing, written out just like this to everybody.
Mm-hmm. And there'll be cases where people exterior definitely need a good radio like command and everything like that. I mean, it's a lifeline.
We do traffic
for
on the
Maydays.
highway.
Yeah.
At night, there's all sorts of non-interior firefighters who respond to things like that. Or there are medical personnel who do run only medical calls who have to have a radio to get to dispatch. There's.
I mean, yeah, but in those, a lot of those cases, you have those everybody doesn't carry that radio with them all the time. You wouldn't have to carry that radio with you all the time at your house. You don't bring it home with you. You would, you're the chief, but you're the chief, but what I'm saying is they would stay at the department, they could actually stay on the truck, so if you had, you know, a call at night, the guys, you're gonna be using your radio, that, you know, you're not there, you don't need, you know, I'm just saying, if we could come down with the numbers, you know, and dollar value might still be there,
Yeah.
but, you know, those are the questions that you're gonna be asked.
Yep.
And, you know, I
Right,
just,
you might be able to put 5 portables on a truck so that 5 people respond. They each have a portable. but
Actually, the portables are assigned to a person with a special ID. So, and there are panic buttons on these things that if you go down and you're
interior,
yeah,
It'll tell
they
that I'm
know
standing in a
who it
driveway
is.
who it is. His little board says where we are.
You can't intersperse them. Really doesn't.
So these are all good answers.
see that,
It-
and that's
so-
good to know,
you know,
yeah.
And as soon as you hit that mic, it goes to dispatch as to whose radio that's tied to.
So I think this is great because this is like a core fire department historical fear, is operational decisions being made by people not involved in the fire service. So one of the other examples I was thinking of when you came up with that example is, you know, if they're hanging there and whoever gets there like takes it. We run multiple calls or back-to-back calls or concurrent calls at the same time. And if we send a whole truck out and then there goes that and then somebody else shows up to go somewhere different, they've now got all this mismatched equipment. It's very cumbersome for
But
us.
see how easy it was to explain it? Right there, rather than me being at town meeting and, you know,
It's a
throwing,
single line item.
right, it's a single line item, it's, you know,
Yeah, I don't know which would be less painful for both of us to defend. You know, I can see it both ways. I also see that there's old, you know, existing skepticism of the fire department, and so having this as a town item maybe provides more confidence in reforms or improvements on our side. On our side, you know, dollars that aren't yours are not yours. So. That's is what it is, I guess.
So to get back, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you were coming to the town to present $4,000 worth of
Yes.
for gear.
Yes, we've only got reimbursed for 4 sets of gear.
We don't have any in our current capital budget for that. Nothing was ever requested. So the current year that we're working in, we have absolutely nothing.
We had requested it, what was it, 3 years ago?
Yep.
To have it in every year. 4,000 in every year.
No, it never got requested, so.
and that would be the reason, again, to
Exactly.
go on to the towns. Where
Exactly.
it's in there and there's no,
But it was supposed to be. It was an agreement we made 4 years ago that every year we would get allotted 2 sets of gear. I think we have a contract somewhere that says 2 sets of gear, 4,000 max, up to 10 sets. It didn't have to be consecutive years or
I think if you go back like 2 or 3 years into the town report and pull out the capital plan, it's in there. So I think maybe like as a follow-up to your question, it's like how far out do those capital plans get inked? You know, if in 2021 we had 4 years worth of 4,000, 4,000, 4,000, 4,000, well that would mean that we're here in year 3 or 4 of that, and so was that already approved and is still a part of the budget, or is that?
I would think the first 4,000 would be approved in that year, and then the next year would have so each year that would be looked at, right? So all 16,000 is not approved the first year.
No,
No.
no.
But it'll say that
No.
next year we're going to look at.
But if in 2020 we decided that in that year's capital plan, 4 years out from now there will be $4,000 for gear, what we're maybe learning is that if in 2021 we decide that's not the case anymore, then in 2 years later in 2024 that's
what you'd
It's
wanna
not
make,
there
what
anymore.
you'd wanna do is make sure you came, at budget time and make sure that your numbers
Are there.
are there.
mm,
You know, you definitely have to do that. You make sure your numbers are there, and just like I say, so let's go out to
Or
27.
real quick before 27. In that situation, it's not beyond the pale that in 2021 you say I want 4 years at 4,000, so go through 2024. And in 2023, there's a pandemic, which is making things up. Stuff happens, and the town says you're not getting that 4,000 that year. So that idea, it doesn't guarantee because it's looked at 4 years out that in year 2 or year 3, that 4,000 shows up. That's when you have to
Right. So
pitch it.
you know, Rick
Right.
had that agreement,
Yeah.
and that's great. Except for he doesn't come 2 years later to see if it's still on the roster.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so we don't have that agreement.
Yep.
And,
That's
and I
why
can tell
every
you
year
it
you-
wasn't in 22 and 23 either.
Mhm.
So there's,
Right, that's why you come every year, you know, we
Right.
send out the budget request, and that's where you'd make sure, you'd say, are these items on it for this year?
Right, and that's where you would be able to say, well, $4,000 isn't going to cover what we need, you know, next year, so we need to do 4,500, and it looks like the year after that's probably gonna be 4,800 or 900. So, and then, you know, if it changes, you know, the following year, let us know.
So the numbers are fluid.
The numbers,
Yes.
yeah, are.
until they're approved at town meeting,
Yes, absolutely.
They can only approve 1 year at a time.
yes.
So that's what I'm saying is, you know, with your number, you know, you said 4,000 is the top you can get, but you find out they're 29 now, so you're talking, you know, 50, you know, what, 58? So that's, you should have come to us with this budget here and said, we need 58 for just the 2 gear, you know, the 2 things we wanted. That's how you would do it, and we would put it into the capital budget.
So clearly there's a transition that's happened, you know,
Yeah.
and things have fallen through the cracks over the last several years. I guess my question is, I understand there was kind of a windfall with the bequest to the fire department.
Yep.
You know, would that cover some of the, you know, these misappropriated funds or failing to appropriate funds, and, you know, you eat into some of that windfall reserve to get back onto a...
Yeah, we're not going to go bankrupt on 2 sets of turnout gear. You know, we're not crying on crocodile tears about that. We just wanted to make sure that, like, you know, we recognized in our books that we have a structural problem in how we build it every year, and then that's not working. And so that's why, you know, we're mostly here. This year's individual budget is, you know, going to be an improvement and a help, and but the conversation is more important to us. And I don't know, does that answer your question? Did you have a question?
Well, and I guess a willingness to dig into the windfall reserves is the question. You know, is that something you want to not do at all costs, or are you willing to do that during, you know, this transition period until the budgeting and, you know, for the fire department and the select board are in sync?
I can't speak for the whole department and vote on that, so I wouldn't say probably we would eat into that, but I don't have a
You'd rather not.
controlling vote as my
You'd rather
own
not,
person, yeah.
yes, I mean, that would be,
Like we mentioned last time, when we had that truck going for an oil change. I mean, we could have been looking at a new engine.
Yeah.
Had it been 2 weeks later. I mean,
Yeah.
we gotta recognize that we need the reserves too at some point, potentially. Like, you guys wouldn't drain your capital reserves.
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting thing to discuss too. Maybe it's like if we're going to carry our capital items on here, you know, does the fire department accounting have any use for capital budget, or should it just all be in operating expenses, and we should include all of our capital budget items on the town's annual?
No, because there could be things that you, in your capital, that you may wanna purchase yourself, generators, you know, portable tanks, whatever you know, there's gonna be other items that you're not gonna wanna sort of nickel and dime our capital, the town's. You're gonna have things that you're gonna wanna just be able to go purchase.
As an organization, that's like a little cumbersome to do it that way. You know, I'd rather just add more lines in here and have my rollover at the bottoms show me what my current balance is.
let's put it this way, you can do it that way. It doesn't mean it's going to be approved.
Right.
You know what I mean? So say you wanted a generator, the select board you want to generate it in 10 years. Now, 10 years down the road, that select board may say, no.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to put that in. We're not going to put that in there. Any one of these items. I mean, next year, the next select board, because we're all every year somebody new comes on, or sometimes it stays, but they may argue with the fact about, I don't know, throw out any one of those things there, and say no, we don't want to approve that.
Mhm.
You know, there's always that possibility. We go to town meeting, and the voters say, guess what? We don't want to approve that item. There's no guarantee on any of that.
But the select board could say, no, we don't wanna pay, $10,000 for this item. But you can go to town meeting and say, we'd like $10,000 for this, and the voters can add that to the budget. And the fire department has been very successful in getting support from town
Yeah,
meeting.
I've
There's very
been present
seldom,
for
I
that
don't
before.
recall a time when something for the fire department has been voted down.
We got pretty close this summer.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
that tide has turned, where people are getting tighter with their money and they're really looking at things. So and that's why it's better if you work with the select board through the capital budget and come in and explain it here and have both sides on the same side.
Mhm.
Rather than the select board saying, guess what, we don't want to do this generator, we don't, you just bought one here, and now you're saying in 5 years you need a new one? It's easier if we work together.
Yep. Can I ask, like, what would it look like on the town side if we, when we're successful at applying for grants on things? Like if we've got an item that's due next year, and so we see that coming, and this year we put together our application, and then July of next year, after the year's already started, that we win our grant and FEMA's going to pay for it. That item maybe has already been on the capital budget, so do those dollars
Do you lose them?
double off, or yeah?
Well, I'm a good test case. Right? If that money's already been voted on by the town to be for that item, it can't, even if you get a grant, it doesn't just immediately disappear. Something has to happen to take it from that line on the capital fund, right?
No, if they get a grant to cover something that's been approved, you don't have to take it out of the capital plan. You can take it, you can use the grant money.
Right.
But
Where's the capital plan money
you
go?
can't use that grant money
Right.
for something different.
Right. So if
Exactly.
we get SCBA's, we're not going to need them again for 18 years or 15 years.
And that money's already sitting in the capital fund, right? Let's say it is.
Yeah.
What happens to that money? That's the question, right?
Yeah.
But it's there, you decide in 3 years you need something else,
Mhm.
then, the money is there.
Do we have an opportunity to
Add that to the
take that
capital.
to the next 2 years later? Say,
Yes.
you know what? We bought these air packs. They're great. We're not buying new ones.
But we would like to get
We propose
this next year.
this instead, and that then goes to the meeting, and that item gets, those dollars get released and reassigned to a different item. Is that the process?
I guess I'm confused. So say just doing the Scott packs there.
Mhm.
It's 170,000, right? We've got it in there right now at 170,000. You get a grant for 150,000.
Right.
All you need to do is use 20 of those $1,000. We've already got that money in the capital budget. You would get the $2,000 out of the capital budget for that
balance.
for that item,
Yeah.
and that's what you wanted. So, but that money is still in the capital budget. If you needed something else, so the next year, you're not going to. Let's put it this way: you're not going to get a check from the town for 150,000 to go spend on whatever you want to spend.
Sure,
on.
it stays in, but it doesn't get perpetually tied up in another set of Scott packs because we.
No, because you spent it on with your grant you got, and then you took the 2,000. There's the 150,000 or 170,000. That was.
And so could we,
I just want to make sure that if we're going to be applying for grants and we would like that to accrue to additional capital.
Need to be incentivized to.
Yeah.
Oh, we'd love to have anything that
Yeah,
you can
we
do
would
for
too.
grants, I mean,
Also taxpayers, I'm also here with my Paul hat, like Matt.
Right, so-
50%. Yeah.
So in theory, I'm not saying what happened, the next year you have 78,000 for cylinders. So that 150 that's left, could you transfer 78 into the cylinders so the town doesn't have to add that, right?
no, it would be,
Added that.
it would be just, it would stay on our bottom line.
It'd be on the bottom line.
It'd be on the bottom line, how much we have in there. And with the
So
next
we
year,
could-
the next year, we wouldn't have to put in as much
Sure.
to the capital budget because we've got that extra 150,000, so that blew that number
But when you're
up.
talking capital budget, you're talking the town's capital budget?
Yes,
The
yeah.
fire department's portion of the capital budget.
No, they're, if they go with it, they're in our capital budget. There will not be a fire department capital budget and a town's capital budget. It will be a capital budget.
Right, so that 150, to answer the question of where does that 150 go?
It goes into that
It goes
bottom line.
into the town bottom line.
The whole, yeah,
The whole
because
thing
the,
is a town.
the whole
Yeah,
thing
the
is,
whole thing is a town.
that's why the whole
Yes.
thing is
Yeah.
a town. So yes.
The town is buying the Scott packs.
And that's why we try to keep right now over $200,000 at all times in there for any kind of, thing, emergency that comes up. Something, like with your,
Tornado takes the
well,
roof
no,
off the
with your fire truck.
Mhm.
Guess what? It was an extra $100,000 because of interest and stuff, which you won't have being in this. But we could have gone to the taxpayers and said, "Can we out of the capital budget for the fire truck?" But that's why you would be in the fire department and the town's capital budget would be the one and the same. That bottom line on the bottom of our thing, how much we have extra, would be the town's. It wouldn't be the fire department's. It would be,
And it already is for the truck, right? 'Cause
Right.
That's
yes,
within the town's budget.
yeah.
And then the proceeds from sale of old trucks stays in capital budget.
Yes. Essentially, if you sell
So
a
if
fire truck,
We
you'd
buy,
have
we
to-
buy it for 500,000 and we sell it for 5 at the end. The 5,000.
it comes back to the town. Yes, and it gets put into the budget, into the capital budget account. Yes.
So I guess a question that we have to ask you now then, while we're doing this, is this something that you want to do with the tech? I mean, because we're not gonna put the numbers in there if you don't want to be part of it. You know what I'm saying? Well, you would have to do this on your own and bring it to us, say this is what we want, and then we'd have to present it. Or do you want to be part of the capital budget? I mean, right? Am I? Yeah.
Yes.
I think it'd be better to be in the capital budget.
Well, oh, definitely. I would say so, but I mean,
I agree.
Yeah,
In the town's capital budget.
right.
I think probably, unfortunately for our own organization, that's probably an area where we would have better success in a town vote than a single line item ask. As a nonprofit, that is annoying. But I think we sort of owe the town repair work in our transparency, and that may help.
Yeah, as Lewis said, it's a way for us to be on the same side. Working to convince taxpayers that it's a worthwhile expense.
Yes. I guess if that answers your question, we would like to do that with you.
And the one thing Maria had mentioned is keeping our capital things for things we may want for generators. But with this budget we're seeing right here, we actually have no way to build that capital plan
Well,
going forward.
You do, because you just had a surplus of $17,000 at the end of June.
And then
So
you're
that could be
taking 9 of
transferred.
it, right? So that's
Yeah, I didn't understand any of that, so.
Yeah, so let's maybe try to talk on that. So, you know, if the town is looking to contribute $84,918, we would rather 61,918 of that be a general line item contribution.
So you wanna level fund it?
If the balance of, you know, if other increases are going into those capital reserves, yes, you know, we would rather reserve the opportunity to decline to paint our station than we would to plan on burning $9,000 worth of reserves of our own cash. You know, if you guys give us $52,918 in general contribution, we are going to lose money the next year. We will lose money. We'll have some new things because you'll have added money to our capital budget, but we as an organization will lose money.
You didn't last year, at the end of fiscal year in June, you didn't, you had a
Because we got
$70,000 surplus.
Yeah, we got a windfall from somebody who died and left us 20% of their home. You know, we
That's not in here,
can't count on that.
that's not part of your income here,
I don't think that part is.
It's not in there.
it's not in
No,
there.
that was good fundraising year and
Exactly,
and
right.
that-
So, I mean,
But that's
you're
one
worried
thing.
about $9,000, but you have, if you look at uniforms, you've got PPE, you only spent $500, but you budgeted 10 grand. So there's $9,500 right there. So you're really not looking at a loss. I mean, if you change that 10 grand to $1,000, which would be more realistic, there's your $9,000.
Yeah, well, we just spent 5,800 10 minutes ago in that conversation on PPE. Yeah, it's I mean, you know, you guys will we'll leave the table and you guys can discuss it, but
Oh, we want all your input you
Yeah.
you can give us now, because really, I mean, not that I don't like seeing you guys here, but you know, I'd rather not have to go through it again. So I'd rather have it, you know, more done here, the most we can do now.
yeah. I mean, I guess I would just sort of leave it with like a parting pitch of like, we are doing more now than at any other time in the department's 70-year history. And we're doing it with fewer people for things that cost a lot more money. And we're responding to a lot more calls. And to ask us to make up the match with additional fundraising. Like, I did training last night. I'm here tonight. I'm not at dinner with my family either of those nights. I'm taking first responder training Saturday and Sunday. You know, we're gonna lose members. We have the same reason you have a hard time hiring road crew people is because our demographics in Dummerston and Vermont suck. We're getting older. There are fewer people able to do this volunteer work. We're not getting people knocking on our door. It is getting harder and harder. And that 30,000 number for fundraising events, I mean, this is not a threat, but like it is increasingly difficult to put on those events. You know, windfalls are one thing. Successful fund drive letters, we will always do that because it just costs a letter and a check. But it's tiring to run the department, and it's getting more tiring to do it.
I know we start
To
in
do-
April, start planning the golf tournament for
Yeah,
August.
to do the training that you need to do, respond to your calls, have a life, and then have to,
What's that?
you know, stand around with a hat trying to collect money. That's a lot to ask of anyone.
So I got two things out of this, right? So the capital fund decision, right, whether to move it or not, is one thing. And one of the biggest problems you guys have is the percentage of your operating expenses that are coming from fundraising.
Yes.
Right? And as you say, it's lumpy. How much was it for the house? Like you got 40 grand or whatever. I don't know what it was.
44.
Right. That's not gonna happen every year, which I understand. Things can get rained out. And so the concern is that, yeah, if your operating budget is coming from 33% or 40% fundraising, let's say, there's a risk there, right? And so the risk tolerance is either going to be taken by you or the town, right? Because if suddenly your golf tournament doesn't happen, there's $10,000 that you guys have to dig into your your capital fund, we'll say, not the capital fund we're talking about, that you're gonna eat into? And how much of that can you do to survive?
Yep.
Okay. Those are the two things that I have out of this. To figure that out, how much the town's gonna put in to try to offset any of those issues.
And I think for us, I'd like to bring all this back to the department next Tuesday's meeting. So you guys meet on the 13th. We could send an email before that, ahead of that meeting on our takeaways and from our monthly meeting. So our membership is all aware of what's going on. Like, they know we're here talking. They know what our plan was to come here. But fill them in on your side.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got the time to do that, but it's just something that,
I know you guys are running out of time too.
yeah, everybody
this
is. We,
together.
get the budget together and,
But we'd definitely like to be able to go to the department and talk about
oh, yeah,
this too.
you have the time
Oh,
to do
no,
that, and nobody would ask you not to do that.
That's the 12th, I think our meeting is, so. I could send an email the 12th or the
Sure,
morning
or
of
you
the
can come
13th.
back, you know?
Well, we're all in a class.
Oh, that's right, you told me that 3 times now.
On top of the meetings and the fundraising.
So unless you guys decide differently, what we have that's gonna go in the capital plan are 2,000 for pagers, 5,000 for helmets, 15,000 for portable radios, 10,000 for the West Station paint. And do you wanna add 4,000 for gear?
Well, I think they said I should ask for 58.
Well,
Yeah, right.
right, that's what.
Exactly,
that's
that's what
what-
it's gonna
that's what
cost.
it costs,
That's what we wanna know. Right.
Yeah.
So we don't want you to take that 1,800 out
I
of
think
your-
we should ask for 6, honestly, because that's what the gear's costing this year.
Well, then, yes, that's
Okay.
what you,
Okay, yep.
and you need 2 more sets next
Yeah,
year, you're
I
saying,
already
okay,
have people lined
right,
up.
so,
Okay, and this is for this coming fiscal year,
This
July.
will start in July 1st.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, so I put 6,000, okay.
Yes,
so what did you say it was
Which
for again,
We
Maria?
should see if we could
So I have copies of this for you guys, but I
align our
have,
fiscal year with the towns.
2,000?
2,000 for pagers, 5,000 for
our
helmets,
fiscal year.
Yeah.
No, they're starting
15,000 for portable radios,
Yeah,
10,000 for West Station paint,
yeah,
and now 6,000 for gear.
okay, yes.
So I mean, Larry, what's your feeling on, like, if the town is gonna contribute X total dollars to divvy up between 2 budgets?
I think it's a step in the right direction, for sure. I mean, it doesn't put us at a planned loss for capital purchases.
Right.
Well, we don't have a plan for capital purchases.
Yes. We have a plan to lose
Yeah.
out on
And so
making any
our
purchases.
then plan is to lose that next year in operating.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe lose is not the right word.
As you
to
say, I'm
use.
not following, how are you figuring that?
You're talking about the 9,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that that'll be the number, right? I mean, yeah, I think we have to crunch numbers and figure that out.
Yeah.
And the other thing we
Sounded
talked
like
about
a
last
lot of
week
confusion
was
around
the
10,000 number.
extra ARPA money from the lights
Oh, yes.
that we talked about. You guys
I,
returning and reapplying to apply
Yes.
towards something else.
Yeah, we're
I
collecting,
got a quote
collecting our quotes for that.
from
Gonna
one of our
come back.
members for the panel and all the breakers and the connectors that go into it. It was $319.38, and he's gonna do the work for free. So we were hoping we could use that out of that ARPA money we already had for West Street money for electrical work. It wasn't an exact line that I had sent. I think I forwarded it to you from the quotes versus what we paid out
Yes.
for KO Electric.
Mhm.
It wasn't one of those line items, but it is necessary. The breakers they're tripping, they're not
Yeah.
resetting properly, and we got a guy willing to do it for free, so it's $3. But
That's 300 and something?
$319.38, and so what we'd be returning, hang on, I had it pulled up in my calculator. What we'd be returning to the town would be $10,235.62.
So why wouldn't you come with a request for $10,000 for painting to paint the West Station
Yeah.
paint the West Station
Sure.
for that 10,000, that would take
Then
that
we take
10,000 out
Then
of
we take it
here.
out of the budget.
Drop that off that one.
And that would
Yeah.
drop it off there, or you could,
Yeah, exactly.
So- So that's what I would do, is I would send in a request for a request for ARPA funding for those two things. And we will,
Some of us, I won't speak for the whole department, but some of us are also on board of, getting a crew together on a weekend, buying just the paint, getting the quote for the paint, the tape, the sheetrock, because there's big holes in the ceiling.
Yeah.
There's spackle, whatever, stuff like that, to make it look nice. Back to normal, but throwing a pizza party and doing it ourselves. So we could spread our purchases and maybe get those pagers too and stuff like that.
well, that's what I was just gonna say, if you're gonna do that, then
But-
jump up to the next thing that we can knock off this list.
But
Right.
Some
Through
of
ARPA
us would
funding
rather have
rather than-
Momomini paint it and not give another Saturday, so we're not unanimous.
So that, yeah, you all need to vote on that, 'cause I was just gonna say,
willingness
he's
to
committing
do
you
that.
to
Yeah.
a whole, another
not,
weekend of
not
painting.
necessarily, yeah.
Well, yeah, no, but that's
There's
something
a
I'd
crew
look
guys
at, but
that-
I'd look at it sooner than later, because
Yes.
we are going
I'm
to
working on
have
a quote from one paint company right now. Second paint company.
You can
And then
paint the firehouse. Got a bunch of free time.
you guys all have so much
Inside,
time,
yeah, outside.
time to do it, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't do it yourselves.
back in the 90s, firefighter one course was like 76 hours. Now it's 184 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Like 40 hours to maintain.
So yeah, I'd come up with those numbers. If you guys do decide to do the painting yourself, don't have him help you. But then go look at another one of these items that we might be able to kick off there. So the less money that you have to do, we have to send to the taxpayers.
Yeah, we're the taxpayers, so.
Right.
We are the taxpayers
Yeah.
too, so that's where
We
If
get
nobody's
it.
painting the firehouse, what the heck, you won't paint my house?
No, but if you're willing to come to the firehouse, it's much larger.
Yeah,
I was
it's,
just going to.
we're
We need
working
more
on our
hands.
letter to be, included in the town report, and we're certainly gonna solicit for non-fire help, anywhere and
That's
everywhere.
a good idea.
Fundraising or
Auxiliary kind of-
or
Our auxiliary
painting or
rebuilding.
however people feel like they can help, we'd be happy to have them.
And just getting the word out about painting party, I bet there's some people in the town that would, help out.
Yep.
Particularly if it means savings on taxes down the road.
Right. And it makes that so much easier if you do that, get these numbers even further down. I mean,
And ARPA in particular can't really,
right.
it's not tax money, right? We don't have any control. It has to follow rules, so we might as well use it.
Any money's tax money.
Yeah.
It
Well,
doesn't matter.
eventually it comes
There is
right.
no money that
But its
isn't
process
tax
is different
money.
than our process.
Different tax money.
It's not
No
money
such
we're
thing as free
raising.
money.
Dollars on the ground.
What?
Yeah. Those are
I'm leaving the lights on.
Still
the
comes
house.
out of my paycheck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but thank you guys, and I
Yeah,
hope
that was very
I hope you
enlightening.
guys.
Dan will most likely do a follow up after a monthly meeting on the 12th or the 13th. Just talk with the department about it. I suspect they'll want to go forward.
Well, I hope you guys do.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
like I
we-
said, I really hope that's the way you guys decide you want to do it. I just think having the select board and whoever's, the fire department on the same side presenting it makes things go so much smoother.
Yep. Perfect.
Right.
Good.
Thank you. Sorry for
Thank you.
stealing an hour.
But we'll charge you for it.
We know.
Our pay's gonna go up.
Ours won't.
We're still at a deficit.
Thanks, guys.
I think I'm up to 6 zeros now.
Okay, take care, guys.
Thank you.
Let's see. So, okay, got all those numbers, everything.
I think so.
Okay. Let's see, there's one recognition of visitors' public comments that I'm going to take advantage of, and that's, there was a article, Lester Dunkley is retiring, and
Right.
he's been a fixture of, and his father for quite a long time in Brattleboro. manufacturing,
Well, I know where their place is at.
Whatever-
And he helps out in the
whatever
community
you
center
need.
too, I believe.
whatever you need, he can make it. So
We've all
he's
got stories.
retiring soon. So just to acknowledge Lester.
Thank you for doing that.
And do we have anything on the road foreman's report?
Not really.
Thank you. Let's go on. Correspondence for information. Anything there? Okie dokie. Any update on Salmon Brook?
I have heard from nobody.
Okay.
So I'll reach out to them again this week and see, what they want to.
Okay.
It's kind of in their hands.
New business, ARPA updates, any? Okay.
Do you want to talk about this?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the next.
Okay, yes, it's on the.
Is it?
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
If you want a new agenda right here.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh man, I printed it this
Yeah.
afternoon.
I did too, and it wasn't on, and I had to have it.
Yeah, I'm suspicious.
Yep.
All right, there you go.
Okay, so the regional policing study, you attended the meeting about
That's right.
this, and this would be just that we're to state that we're interested in pursuing
The
the
discussion.
discussion.
Yeah, no commitment whatsoever.
No commitment.
And they've asked to, and the reason I put on the representatives is they've asked that the towns go to the representatives so when they go back in session, they've got some kind of support to decide whether to do this, to not do it, to approve it, to not approve it, and that'll be up to them. It will require, and I'm happy to do it. I think what he would like to have is a member from each town who comes to these meetings, talks about it, takes notes, reports back what's going on. So that can be done. So I tried to make it as generic as possible, not commit you, Zeke, to anything more. So
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we sign the policing letter.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
All right, let's see. I was going to take this opportunity to explain why in our draft budget it's 39% increase so far, but I think we took care of that at the beginning of our meeting.
I'm
So,
pretty aware of why it's.
is there any other new business?
No, I'll make a
I don't
motion.
know. Let me look at the agenda. Just kidding.
I'll make a motion we adjourn.
I'll second it.